Now this one is entitled Types of Collectives. Now collectives, if you think about the word, is an investment, but we're trying to avoid the problems of investing money, and that is to have, you need a lot of money to do it, you need a lot of expertise to do it, you need to have access to stockbrokers and apps and things. It costs money, there's charges involved. So doing it on your own with one company, for example, one or two companies, is a hard thing to do. So people have chosen collectives in order to pool your money with other people's money, and this great big sum of money can then be used to buy stocks and shares and things like that, fixed interest funds. So what is a collective? Well, many years ago, when I was a traveling trainer, I do most of my work in the studio now. Life changes, isn't it? As a traveling trainer, my job was to travel around the country doing training all over the place, and I often used to be gone for the whole week. And one evening on a Friday, I got home, and my kids were very young at the time, and I arrived home, very tired I was, so I went to bed. The following morning I woke up quite early actually, and I came downstairs for breakfast, and I thought, well, let's go into the cupboard and get some cereal. I just wanted a quick breakfast, And I went into the cupboard where the cereal's kept, and I couldn't find a packet of cereal that had any amount in them for a decent portion. Every box had tiny little dribbles of it. So Sugar Puffs had a little bit at the bottom, the cornflakes had a little bit at the bottom, the Rice Krispies had a little bit at the bottom, the granola had a little bit at the bottom, the sugar toasted frosty crunchy things had a little bit at the bottom as well, Weetabix. There wasn't enough there for me to have a bowl of one cereal, because the kids, being kids, got to the bottom of the box and couldn't be bothered to throw it away, could they? They just put it back in the cupboard. So I thought I'll have a little go here. So I got a mixing bowl out, and I got all the boxes, and there were about 10 or 12 boxes of cereal in that cupboard. I poured all the remnants of these cereals into this big bowl. So as you can imagine, just looking at the picture here, I had a bowl here with all sorts of cereal in it, and I mixed it around with a decent spoon, to give it a dry spoon, of course. Mix it around. It's all dry cereal. And I stirred it around, so the Sugar Puffs were mixed in with the Cocoa Pops, which were mixed in with the cornflakes, and it was very colourful, and it didn't look particularly appetising, but I thought, well, I'm going to have a bowl of this. So I took out a bowl, and I poured the milk in, and I thought I'd have some of that. It was nice. Anyway, Bethan came down from first and said, "What's for breakfast, Dad?" Expecting it delivered on a plate, And I said, "Oh, I've got special cereal for you. Sit down and I'll serve you." And so I got her a bowl, and I poured the cereal in the bowl. This thing looked great, but when you put the milk in, the colour of the milk, it kind of turned a grey browny colour. Anyway, it was great, and Bethan's going, "Ew, I can't eat that, Dad." But she tried it. She tried eating it, and she said it was delicious. Bit of sugar on it. It was delicious. So what's the moral of that story? Well, the moral of the story is that bowl of cereal was a little bit like a unit in one of these collectives, or bits of one of these collectives. Remember, a collective is about you putting all your money into a big pool, loads of other people's money as well, and you buy little units or bits of that pooled investment. Now each bit or each unit of that pooled investment consists of every single share fixed interest that's been bought by the fund managers. Now that bowl of cereal contained 12 or 13 different cereals, so it's a bit like a unit really, because inside there you get bits of cornflakes there, some Rice Krispies there, some Cocoa Pops there, a bit of Weetabix over there as well, maybe a bit of porridge or something, all mixed together. So one mouthful of that allowed you to consume every single cereal in the cupboard, and that's what a unit is in a collective. It's tiny things, units, because each one contains tiny bits of every investment that's under the hood there, which is a great way of balancing your risk. So let's have a look at these things. Well, first of all, people nowadays use platforms to invest in collectives. A platform is a computerized dashboard run by companies like Hargreaves Lansdown, Vanguard, people like that, which allows the customer to see at a glance exactly all the investments they've got. So that's what the platform is. And broadly speaking, there's four types, get a bit technical now, four types of collective. The first type is what they call corporate ones. Then you've got trusts. Then you've got life assurance. So I'll put that in there as well. And the final one, which I've put together, really, are synthetics. Now, synthetics, of course, is where we create something out of nothing. So drugs, of course, have been synthesized for years, haven't they? Plant-based medicines have been synthesized in drugs. They're called synthetics. They're man-made, effectively. So I want to put that one in there because that's a new kid on the block when it comes to CMAT1. Now, the corporate side, the collectives there, well, the first one are investment trusts. Now, an investment trust is a company in its own right that invests in shares. So it's a company and it issues shares like all companies do. And you buy shares in that company. Now, that investment trust company has money, which it then uses to invest in other company shares. So you might, for example, have Scottish Investment Trust or Aberdeen Japan. An Aberdeen Japan Investment Trust is a company, so you buy shares in that. And Aberdeen Japan invests in companies in Japan because that's what they do, and they do it very well. So that's the first one, investment trusts. You've got OICs, open-ended investment companies. Again, investment companies, they're corporate. They're run by corporates, effectively. Corporate stature, that's the whole point. Open-ended investment company is new kid on the block from unit trusts. It invests in other shares and other instruments, fixed interest, and again, you buy shares in that as well. It's not investment trust, it's open-ended, it's a fund, effectively. It's not a company in its own right. Then you've got trusts. Now, the big trust, of course, is unit trusts. There you go, let's put unit trusts in there. Now, unit trusts are a bit old-fashioned now. Most have been transferred to OICs. Unit trusts are run by trustees. They have a trust deed. And obviously, the fund managers manage them, and they're owned by fund management companies, but they're unit trusts run by a trust deed, effectively run by trustees. And you buy units in the fund. But they've been pretty much taken over by OICs. Then you've got life assurance. Now, people forget about life assurance. IFAs do anyway because of RDR. Killed them, really. Because life assurance-based investments used to pay good commission. But IFAs aren't allowed to receive commission on investment advice anymore, so very few people get involved in these things. Now, the first one is bonds. Now, you often get these things for inheritance tax purposes. You can get discounted gift trusts, that sort of thing. Putting a bond into trust, because you can put life insurance into trust. So you can put your investment into trust, effectively. So it's a way of avoiding inheritance tax. Jolly good way of doing it. So bonds have their use there. But they're run by life insurance companies. You buy them through insurance companies. So the fund managers are employed by the insurance company, but they are bonds. They are lump sum investments into bonds. The other type, of course, are regular ones, such as endowments, which we don't see anymore, do we? Endowment policies. You can have 10-year endowments, that sort of thing. Now, they're regular premium investments into a life assurance fund. So it's the same kind of concept, really. And you can have with profits and unit linking and all those things. But we talk about that more in detail. Now, the last one, synthetics. I'm going to call that ETFs. I'm going to put ETFs in there. Now, ETFs, exchange-traded funds. New to the syllabus, really. A lot of people use these exchange-traded funds rather than invest in shares in whatever fund you want, like the Japan fund or whatever. You actually follow a index like a FTSE 250 shares in the UK Stock Exchange, or you might follow an index of tech firms or an index of energy firms. And what the ETF does is it doesn't actually invest, well, the synthetic ones, doesn't actually invest in the shares. It gives you a return based upon that particular index. So it's passive, it's not actively run, it just follows the index, but it uses derivatives and swaps and things to give you the same kind of return that index would have given you. So it's quite a clever little thing, really, ETFs. So that's a new kid on the block, really. Now, a few other concepts, of course, you've come across before. Don't forget passive versus active when it comes to funds. Passive versus active. You may have heard that phrase before. A lot of people now do DIY investing. So passive is very much DIY. DIY versus advisor is the other one for you. This is where you either have a financial advisor who gives you advice on the various products within your platform. So my IFA, for example, uses an Aegon platform, which they have all sorts of insurances and bonds and unit trusts that I use, plus my pensions go in there as well. Now, I use my financial advisor for that one, but now I've moved over to DIY investing. I use Vanguard's platforms. I do it myself because I kind of know what I'm doing. But that's something to think about. But passive versus active, this is the key one. If it's a passive investment, it means that there's no human doing any decisions to try and beat the stock market or beat the index. They're using algorithms and computer programs to just match an index, really. So ETFs are all passive, as you can appreciate. You can have unit trusts, which invests in passive funds as well, where there's no managers behind the scenes, and therefore they just follow what the FTSE 250 is doing or follow what the Nasdaq is doing. The argument is that very few people actually beat the market. Stock pickers. Now, active investment is where you have fund managers, they all make decisions about what's bought and what's sold. People, experts in their field, and they try to beat the stock market, which is a pretty cool thing to do, isn't it? And every week you read about fund managers who've exceeded the stock market by hundreds of percents, and they end up hedge funding and making a fortune. But of course you've got to pay for that, which is the last point to make: fees. Everything comes with a cost. And Consumer Duty is putting the microscope on fees at the moment, for value for money kind of thing. And I've heard a few investment firms now reducing their fees just a little bit, here and there, because maybe they didn't think it gave value for money. Because the fees are fairly frothy on this stuff. You never see a poor fund manager or a poor IFA. The fees are quite frothy, but they do a great job because they look after people's investments. Of course they do. But passive investments is much cheaper because it's a computer you're paying for, a computer program, rather than an active fund manager. So think about fees as things move forward. The last point, of course, is ISAs. Let's put that over here. An ISA, in its own right, is probably closer to a platform than an actual investment. A lot of people think an ISA is an investment. It's not. An ISA is a wrapper. It's actually probably better called a platform, because the ISA itself invests in various things here. You can put all of these into an ISA if you wanted to. And it makes it tax-free. How cool is that? 20 grand a year as well. So there's quite a lot going on there with ISAs. Everyone should start with ISAs. And we're talking about equity ISAs here, not cash ISAs. They're very different things. So I think that's a lovely little overview of collectives. I hope you like my cereal analogy. I eat porridge now because it's good for your body. I don't eat cornflakes and sugar coated Rice Krispies, and Frosties were the loveliest things ever, weren't they? Frosties, as Tony said, they're great, said Tony. I remember that commercial from the 80s. But Frosties were gorgeous, but so full of sugar. Unbelievable what they did to your teeth as a kid. So that's collectives. Hope that's been useful.